I've had the great privilege of traveling all over the country and all over the world as an educator and a musician. And yes, it's true, I am a drummer. But today, there's no hidden set of drums, I don't have any cool tattoos, nor a rad hitchhiking story coming from my apartment in Brooklyn, New York. We stand on one of the largest plots of common ground today, which is education. We've all been through some variation of the system, but we share in this space also because many of us feel that there's something wrong with our schools. Dropout rates are climbing all over the country and world. Students are increasingly reluctant. The teacher riots, the violence. As a little guy, I did well in school. I was actually told I wasn't particularly bright, but what I figured out early on was there's a game to play. Making the grade, acing the test, high exam scores, doing these things had little to do with the subject matter. And I figured this out around 9 or 10 years old, and it felt awful. Because honestly, I loved the subject matter, all of them. I genuinely loved learning. I was born that way. We all were. Since I wasn't particularly bright, but I had mastered the grade game, I was the perfect fit to be a teacher, right? Now don't worry, I did not pass my game playing skills on to my students. But when you think about it, what would you have me do? Impress upon my students the importance of personal growth at the expense of the almighty GPA? There's no winning that game. And yet it's the game students and teachers are forced to play. For nearly 20 years, I taught every level of the education system, but no more. Now, rather than mastering the game, I'm committed to changing it. 20 tireless years as a teacher. I've studied in 15 countries to date. I've had thousands of students and thousands of performances. And what I've come to realize is this: a culture is a reflection of its own educational efforts. And I feel the single greatest issue we face in the world today is a fundamentally flawed system of education. Our culture's daily news feeds are filled with absolute madness. And I feel much of this is rooted in not what, but how we educate ourselves. Now, I understand this is a bold claim coming from a simple music teacher and a drummer that doesn't have tattoos. Education is a touchy subject because it shapes much of who and what we are. But to change our news feeds, we have to change the game of education. Changing the system begins with realizing that we are the system. The system is not some distant boardroom ran by a select few. No, the system is us. And I believe to truly innovate inside the classroom, we must realize that we were born to learn outside of the classroom. TED is a generally accepted authority on thought and new ideas. And we've all seen tons of TED Talks, but have you spent much time on their website? On their education page, the very first line reads, "How do we change education? Reimagining school, there's a growing consensus worldwide, the systems are broken." I don't think the systems are broken, I think they're exhausted. And you don't need me or any other educator up here providing further defense of this truth, but I want to make sure that you're aware of the most common arguments. It's simply outdated, rooted in ideologies older than our country itself, and mandated by all 50 states in 1918. Exactly 100 years have gone by, the world has radically evolved, yet the process of education is largely unchanged. It's a one-size-fits-all model on a fixed time frame, cognitively clumping us all together, boxing our minds into unified packages in assembly line fashion. The obsession with assessments. We test, grade, and GPA our students to death into new levels of stress and anxiety, often destroying their natural imagination, curiosity, creativity, and most importantly, their self-respect. And it's a big bureaucratic business. The United States alone is rapidly approaching annual expenditures of $1 trillion on education, yet many of our schools lack basic facilities, basic technology, and our courageous teachers occupy most of the bottom of what we call middle class. We're still doing this, not because it works, but because it's what we've always done. Our culture values tradition. But how do we want to approach education? As deeply rooted tradition? 100 years of innovation has brought us so much. We can now talk to our toasters. We've come so far. Imagine if our students could process information as well as our appliances. Alexa, learn algebra. Imagine where our culture would be today if the assembly line had only included cars and not our students. I have this thing I would do with students when they took issue with something. They would come to me very, very flustered, and they would say, "Mr. Eagle, I'm very flustered about so-and-so and such and such." And I would say, okay, well, first, let's all stop, and let's all take a big, deep breath. Now, let's address the problem. We are the system, and I have 3 things for you today that you can do in your daily life to help influence and change education. Number 1, accept your role as a teacher and a student. Now, we're all already really good at telling people what we know, but that's not teaching. Teaching is less about imparting knowledge and more about providing guidance and support. Your students could be your kids, other young people, other adults, anyone. You are a teacher. Everyone around you is your student, and your world is your classroom. Because no one has had your experience, and all of us stand to benefit from your perspective. You are also a student of life, developing a love of learning. If you think you're disconnected from your natural love of learning, simply observe children. They want to know everything about everything, and they only ever stop being curious and creative because they're told to. Realize your natural instinctive love of learning. Remember your childhood wonder of the world. If it's buried deep inside, find it. I promise it's there. You were born to learn. Accept your role as a teacher and a student. Number 2, identify passion. If you're taking on the role as a teacher in a situation, you must first identify the passion of your students. Start by asking, by listening, by observing. Let's take a common passion of many young people, video games. Now, despite my classroom game playing mastery, I am not a gamer. I fell off that boat a long time ago when I gave up trying to beat Mike Tyson. Couldn't do it. Guy's tough. What exactly do your students love about video games? Is it the awesome graphics, the amazing imaginative characters and worlds? Is it the connectivity with other players? Is it the electrical side, the coding? Help them discover why, and you're likely to find that what's often viewed as a distraction is actually a gateway to their most amazing ability. Learning begins with passion. Number 3, do stuff. Put passion to work with purpose by doing things. It is remarkable how much we actually learn through experience around the house or in the community. Finally organize the garage, build that back fence, organize an event, sell some of your stuff, anything. As you do stuff, incorporate technology. Build a simple website detailing your newfound skills and expertise. Share your discovery and experience with the world by embracing social media. Start a simple YouTube channel. Deep, meaningful learning happens through experience and creation. Just do stuff. I promise there's no way you won't learn from it. Accept your role as a teacher and student. Identify passion and do stuff. This is how we learn. And by living this simple process, you can help influence, innovate, and change the process of education. I've spent my entire life in education. Though I played the game, I lived it as a committed student, then I became part of it as a teacher. No matter how effective I was, the interest of the institution always superseded those of my students. So for me, the game was over. When I gathered my last class of students to tell them that I was not only leaving them, but I was leaving education entirely, it was like nothing I had ever felt before. Change is difficult, but it's necessary for growth. So there I was, starting all over again. So I began with my passion of music, drumming, teaching, entrepreneurship, and bringing people together. I assembled a team of others who felt the same way, and we started doing stuff. We made our own purpose. We created a new way to learn, to discover, and to connect online, and it's called Rhythm Monster. Rhythm, because there's rhythm in everything, and everything has rhythm. And monster, because that's what us cool music guys call the best of us. And we believe no matter who you are, you can be a monster too. We've been quoted as the Khan Academy of drumming and percussion. On the surface, it's an online music educational platform, but what we really do is provide access and instruction to these secret societies of music and culture. We work with public schools, universities, independent groups, and individuals in incorporating our monster musical resources with their live students and instructors. In less than a year, we've already produced hundreds of original classes, countless innovative studies. We already have a subscriber base in the thousands, connecting people from 25 different countries, and our social media reach has just eclipsed around 500,000 people. And we're just getting started. The age of information is only a couple decades old, and 2 movements have already started. This conversation today is part of the first, and that's the revolution in education. The second is its opposition, anti-intellectualism. Now, it seems that some of our students are subscribing to the latter, and they're often described as lazy and apathetic. And they are, and they will be, until we give them reason to be otherwise. Forcing tradition and ignoring innovation does not work for them. But some kids aren't waiting on us. At Rhythm Monster, I've learned a lot of really cool production techniques from a 12-year-old on YouTube. How awesome is that? Imagine if everything and everyone in that 12-year-old's life supported his passion and guided his purpose, starting with that simple YouTube channel. Imagine what global issues he might solve if allowed to learn in a way that made sense to him. And finally, when it comes to innovation, the leader of our lifetime is Mr. Steve Jobs. In his final public presentation, he said, "To change our culture, technology alone is not enough. It's technology married with the liberal arts that yields us the results that make our hearts sing." I believe your passion has been singing your entire life, and the traditions of education have taught you to keep it quiet. Join this revolution. Help change our news feeds by allowing every child to discover their passion and find their purpose. And never give up on another human being because of age or circumstance. There is no quick fix. But as long as you have a pulse, you have rhythm, which means you have the ability to influence. We stand on this common ground of culture today because of where we've been in education, and it's time to move on. Be a living reflection of a new culture in education. Forever a teacher and always a student. Thank you.